SLU International Business Now, Conversations That Matter is a podcast developed by the Boeing Institute of International Business in St. Louis University's Chaffetz School of Business. Special thanks to founder Dr. Sung Kim for his grant to support the launch of this podcast.
A warm welcome to our listeners from the St. Louis University Boeing Institute of International Business. Todd Hovermale here, bringing you Conversations That Matter. For this episode, we revisit a conversation from the Bear International Business Conference held at St. Louis University in December of 2023. Gene Cunningham sat down with Arnold Donald, retired Vice Chair and CEO of Carnival Corporation PLC. The focus of the discussion was the resilience of Carnival's business model, which was put to the test during the global COVID-19 pandemic. Arnold also shared his experiences growing up in Louisiana and how those lessons he learned guided him on his career journey. Here is Gene and Arnold's full conversation from the conference. Enjoy.
Arnold Donald is the former retired vice chair and CEO of Carnival Cruise Line, which I think we're going to hear a lot about today. He was the president and CEO of Carnival from 2013 to 2022, clearly during the global pandemic, and served on their board for many years beforehand. Arnold spent over 20 years at Monsanto as a senior vice president, president of consumer and nutrition, and president of the agriculture business, and then went on to be chairman of Mirasant, which is a spinoff of Monsanto, including Equal Sweetener. He was also CEO of the Executive Leadership Council, a professional network and leadership forum for African American executives. He is a proud graduate of Carleton College, as well as Washington University, and got his MBA at the University of Chicago. Arnold serves on numerous public company boards like Salesforce and numerous nonprofits as well, and we're honored to have him here today to share his message. Arnold, thank you.
We heard from John very eloquently about your esteemed background and your current sharing of your knowledge with several boards that you're on. But before we start to get into the technical side of things, can we talk a little bit about you as a person? And before the C-suite, who are some of the people or what are some of the events that helped shape you as a person?
Okay, so first of all, glad to be with you, Gene. Good afternoon, everybody. And John, muito obrigado, my friend. So thank you very much for the introduction. So it was a cold and rainy day in 1954. No, so the things that influenced me are the things that influence most people. You know, they say that the person doesn't make the times make the person. So I was born in 1954. So I grew up doing civil rights in a segregated South in New Orleans. And civil rights and affirmative action had a huge contextual impact on me, but it also provided, while many challenges, lots of inspiration. Starting with my parents. My parents only were able to complete 8th grade, but they had a passion for education. My sister, I have 4 siblings. A sister that I love to abuse is 3 years older than me. And she, at a very early age, decided she wanted to be a teacher. So I was her only student in her class, where she was principal, teacher, and so on and so forth. But what happened was, before I even went to kindergarten, I could read and write and do arithmetic and stuff, because she taught me everything she knew. So when I got into school, they thought I was smart. And so then they invested in me more. And so I became a vociferous reader. I read everything and read about, all types of people. And somebody decided to hand me a book about African Americans and Crispus Attucks, the first, person killed in the Revolutionary War. And so I started reading about all these figures, but also it's the time of John F. Kennedy and the space race. So all of those, and Martin Luther King and Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali. And so all these things were going on at once. So I grew up very poor, segregated community, lots of messages that you can't do, separate water fountains, separate bathrooms, that kind of thing. You can't come here, you can't go there. But I also grew up in a time of great possibility, because the world was changing rapidly and dramatically. And not the Jesuits' fault, I'm sorry, but it was the Josephites. So I went to St. Augustine High School in New Orleans, a different order. And they told us 3 times a day. It was all boys, all black, It's the only place we could go. It's to a private school. We couldn't go to the white Catholic schools. All boys, all black, 3 times a day. Gentlemen, prepare yourselves. You're going to run the world. They told us when we walked in, they told us at lunchtime, and they told us at the end of the day. And we competed in everything, sports, music, everything, nationally, debate, math, and we were crazily successful because they invested in us heavily. So when I finished high school, I got in everywhere. Yale, Princeton, Stanford, had a nomination appointment at West Point, 3 nominations, one from the Vice President Spiro Agnew at the time, who discovered along the way he actually didn't have a nomination to West Point. And so I still have the letter, but he said, would you like to go to the Naval Academy? I said, no, I'm interested in West Point. And all that, but it was Vietnam. And the world was going through a lot of changes, not just the US, with Vietnam. So all of those things, all those contexts influenced, but what it left me with was 3 things. 1, I had an insatiable appetite for understanding why, how things work, why they work, et cetera. 2, junior year in high school, I decided I was going to be a general manager, Fortune 50 science-based global company. I had no idea what that was, but I obviously got brainwashed by my high school, and so I set out a target to do that, and I mapped out the whole plan. Where I was going to go to university, how many degrees I was going to get 3 degrees, a liberal arts degree, a science degree, and an MBA. And I did all that junior in high school and mapped it out. I had ridiculous test scores because they started training us to take the SATs when we were in 8th grade. We would take an SAT every week from 8th grade all the way up to our junior. So by the time we took it our junior year, everybody smoked the SATs and stuff. So that was the context. And that inspired me to achieve. And then along the way, I just met incredible people and incredible supporters and stuff. And I eventually got to the point at Monsanto, Bob Shapiro was running the company at the time. We had, and I'll stop with this one, but it was a really super significant learning moment. So Bob had just come in. Bob had run a business up, a subsidiary of ours, and he had been brought in to run the agricultural company, which at the time was Monsanto's most profitable and fastest growing sector. And he decided we were going to have a strategic planning meeting. So all of us, all the executives, were called into this room. And when you walked into the room, there were 2 chairs and 2 music stands. And Bob said, I'm going to introduce the people that are going to facilitate the strategy session. And their names were Renee and, oh my gosh, the guy's first name, Bob. I think Renee and Bob Love, 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 okay? And Bob had like a pirate shirt, balloon silk pirate shirt. And they sat down in these high chairs in front of these music stands. And they looked at us in our 3-piece suits with wingtips and whatnot. And they said, okay, except for Bob. Bob had not come from the inner circle of Monsanto. He'd come from outside. He had sweater with caps on it, okay? And they said, we are now going to conduct you through a strategy session. We're like, conduct us through a strategy, okay. And so somebody raised their hand and said, how long is this going to take? They said, 2 years. And everybody, you could hear the groans in the room. And the first question was this: what's the purpose of the firm? University of Chicago Graduate School of Business, hand goes up. Purpose of the firm is maximize return to shareholders of the life of the firm. You earn, increase earnings each year, year after year. You do that, blah, blah, blah. End of story, we're done, let's go, okay? And they said, Bob said, anybody else has any ideas? Okay. And make a long story short, we landed on a vision that said a healthy food and abundant environment for everybody on the planet. And our role was to transform the way food is produced. That whole process, which actually took about a year, taught me a lot, because what it taught me was, at that young age, relatively young age, was people have to own their purpose. So yeah, companies are about making money and it's about the freedom to operate and all that. But in the end, if you really want people to be all in, they have to see what's in it. And what's in it is not the money. Okay, it's a part of it, but it's not the it. What's really in it is, and I always ask these people these three questions. What does success look like for you and your family 5 years from now? You're 5 years in the future and you're looking back and you're saying, we just had the most unbelievable 5 years as a family we could ever have had. What happened? What does success look like for you and your department or profession, whatever it is, 5 years from now? What happened? And what does the success look like for the company or the entity or the organization with 5 years from now? What happened? And when you do that, you find out what's really motivating people, what the real purpose is. And when you can organize around that, you can make unbelievable things happen.
Appreciate that. So you had a challenged beginning.
Yeah.
But from that challenged beginning, some of the key folks around you helped you see there's that vision out in front of where you wanted to go and what you wanted to do.
Right.
Excellent. So with that, conference here is talking about business resilience under global disruption.
Yep.
What's your perspective of what business resilience is? And is that something that you can measure at a firm? And if so, how do you do that?
So for me, business resiliency is thriving over time. And I mean over time. So a good example for me is a company called Meyer Werft in Germany. It builds ships. They started building ships in the 1700s, same family. So think about all the things in Germany, in the world, they've gone through since the 1700s. And that business has not only survived, but thrived. That's business resiliency. When you can withstand pandemics, wars, massive social change, major disruption, and you can operate in those unbelievably chaotic, fast-changing environments and continue to thrive, that's resiliency. And the resiliency in business comes from a very basic place, which all of you guys already know. It's the people in the business. So it goes back to where I started. You know, if people are properly motivated, they have to be talented, they have to have process to be able to organize and work together. They have to be diverse. They do. Because innovation comes from diversity of thinking. And you're going to have a much greater probability of successful innovation if you have people who think very differently with processes in place so they can work together because they think differently. So diversity is a business imperative, and I truly mean that, diversity of thinking. But if you have that, it all comes from the people. And that company survived not just because they had family descendants, but they learned how to bring into their company diversity of thinking and people, that in all these different environments, they were able to weather the storm, take the pauses, all the things that happen in business, and come out on the other side thriving.
Yeah. So the resilience comes from that diversity, being able to see and react to different environments that maybe you don't even know are out there.
You have to innovate.
Yep.
To survive. Everything changes and you have to innovate. Man has adapted. Look at societies. We started out as gatherers, then hunters and gatherers, and then agricultural, then industrial, then, became service-based, now knowledge-based. AI is going to dramatically change our lives beyond what we can possibly imagine right now. And that's the nature of things. So you have to be able to innovate. That innovation comes from people. People adapt and create. And if you have people who are coming at things from very different perspectives and you team them up, they will develop amazing solutions. And that's been my personal experience in business. And you can just read and look at history and see that's what's happened.
We've all talked about the global disruption that the pandemic has been. A resilient company, like the ones you've mentioned, have the experience of what to do in a global pandemic. But what do you think, what do you see as potentially the next global disruptions that are out there? Do you have a view of, is AI driving us toward a different set of global disruptions? How do you view that?
Yeah, I would say, I gave a talk many years ago at a university for a commencement, and I wanted to make it special for those students. So, I studied for the undergrads and grads the 10 years that they went, high school through college, all that. And what was unique about that 10-year period that make it really special to them? So I looked at their 10 years, I went back 10 years, I went back 10 years, I went back 10 years, and I just stopped like in the mid 1800s. It's all the same. There's always wars, health scares. We had a global pandemic in COVID, but in our business, we've had to deal with SARS, MERS, Zika, Ebola. I mean, there's always wars. There's always economic disruption. There's always borders changing and massive cultural shifts, World War I, World War II, Vietnam War, genocides, Rwanda, stuff's going on all the time, okay? Every decade. So the reality is, what's the core of how you deal with the mess that you have at the time you have it? And if you take COVID, and just using our company as an example, we stopped sailing before the government told us to. Because if you don't know the epidemiology and you don't know the transmission characteristics and you have a fast-moving virus, you can't mess with that. Resiliency for our business is we can't have people dying on our ships. We can't, there's no resiliency in that. I mean, nobody's going to want to sail unsafe. So we human beings also. So that's the first reason. But the second reason, if I was just a pure business person, it'd be like, there's no way I'm going to have people dying on my ships. So you can't take that risk. It's a risk you can't live with. So we stopped sailing before that. But now it gets way more complicated. Now you're not sailing, even when you cut a bunch of costs, because ships are not airplanes. You can't put them in a hangar, okay? They have to operate. If they don't operate, they will lock up and you have to make them razor blades. I mean, you'll never rescue that ship. So we had 106 ships, billions of dollars of assets. So we got to keep them running, whether people are on them or not. $600 million a month burn rate, zero revenue. Plus, we had taken deposits. We have a beautiful business model. How many of you cruise? How many of you pay for the cruise in advance? All of you, trust me, okay? We have no accounts receivables. We have a lot of deposits. But if you're not gonna get your cruise, you gotta get your money back. So we got billions of dollars we have to return, $600 million a month burn rate, don't know how long that's gonna last, zero revenue. That's not even the problem. You also we sail 13 million people a year, hundreds of thousands of people at sea. We gotta get them home safe when airplanes aren't flying, borders are closed. You gotta keep them safe with an unknown virus and how it's working, okay, while you're doing that. And I've got 150,000 employees, 90,000 crew members. I gotta get them home safe and keep them safe. Well, so resiliency is when the people that you have in the business pull together in complete uncertainty. How long will it take? How in the world are we going to get people home when we can't fly them anywhere? Some places won't even let people come in the port to get their radiation treatment. I mean, what are we going to do here, right? And so it's when people come together and face those challenges because they have a greater purpose than just making a nickel, okay? And when you get all those diverse people, we have crew from 145 different countries, and I've got in the shore side, great diversity through the ranks, and people coming from different backgrounds, different experiences. You put them together, and they just come up with solutions for things when they're properly motivated. So you give them a little bit of landing room to say, look, for the next 90 days, a lot of stuff's going on in the world. We have enough cash. Don't worry, you're paid. for the next 90 days. Don't even think about that, okay? Now, I know you can't just think for 90 days, but for the next 90 days, if you could focus on this, we'll be working on what's going to happen after that. But we got to focus on these 90 days to get people home safe and so on, so we make sure we have a business. Second thing is then you got to raise money. So 14 transactions in 9 months, $23.6 billion with nobody in an office. The bankers weren't in the office, the lawyers weren't in the office, we weren't in the office, the investors were not in an office, okay? So if somebody had told me before COVID that you could do that, I would have laughed them out the room, you know? But the reality is you had no choice, you had to do it. So we didn't know how long it was gonna be, but we had to do it. And we had to borrow the money in advance, because the last thing you want is a questionable, ongoing business concern from the auditors. And they're not gonna say, well, you got a plan to get money. No, they need to see the money. Otherwise, they're gonna give you an ongoing, business concern. And so you gotta, it's a big juggling act. But when you have the right people properly motivated, you can deal with all that. And then you keep the business going. Plus, we were in the middle of an environmental issue that we had some guy, and why he did a chief engineer. I have no idea why he did what he did, but it's oily water. It's not oil, but it's oily water. And he jury-rigged around all of our systems and pumped it into the ocean. And we found out about it, self-reported. And we found ourselves for the Department of Justice as a criminal, environmental criminal. So that's going on at the same time, and they want to see all these changes you're making on the ships, because the ships are still out there, right? So now you got to punch, you're dealing with regulatory stuff, which often isn't practical. It's like somebody sitting up you're trying to explain, look, this is why that won't accomplish what you think, but they don't want to hear that. So now you got to put money into that and people into it when supply chains are shut down. So you're going to do biodigesters, which we had planned, we were already going to do, but they wanted to accelerate to put the biodigesters in. Well, the companies aren't even producing them because they can't get people in their plants to produce them. And if you don't do it, they're going to hit you with another fine, or possibly worse, hit you with a much broader, criminal act thing. So all this is going on, and that's the world. Yep. And so resiliency is having people properly motivated and skilled to be able to deal with all that and make it work.
Got it. So that was near the end of your time in Carnival Corporation. Let me take you back a couple of years.
Okay.
2013.
Yeah.
You've retired.
Yeah, I've been retired for a while.
You've been
I retired at age 50. I got lucky, so I decided I was going to goof off at age 50, and I was on a bunch of boards.
And so you're goofing off.
Yeah.
All right. Mm-hmm. Admittedly, and you get asked to be CEO of Carnival Corporation.
Yeah.
And you're asked not because Carnival Corporation is doing great, right, but because in 2013, there's 2 highly publicized events that are not positive. The financial performance of that segment is not doing as well as it could be doing. Mm-hmm. And you say, okay, I'll go do that.
Yeah.
What were the first things that you did when you walked into that scenario? Because this is not all of a sudden the problem happened. You knew there was a problem there. So you walked in. What were you thinking at that point in time?
So we had 2 events. We lost the ship. Happens once every 100 years in the industry, but we lost the ship. Concordia went down in off the coast of Italy, and we lost lives. So that was a very legitimate crisis. Then we had what we call CNN crisis, the so-called poop cruise, which was the Triumph, which had an engine failure or whatever. It was never a drift at sea, although CNN showed it every day as if it was drifting. People were not starving or anything. They showed somebody dropping off Spam or something, but I mean, there was plenty of food, yeah. And there was one deck where some sewage had backed up because the engines, generate a lot of stuff. And so they kept showing that one thing where like there was a poop cruise, but it's just one tiny portion of the ship. Nonetheless, it's a PR disaster, okay? And it was on TV for like a week. So those two events that happened, I'm on the board of Bank of America, going ready to go. I'm in New York, about to go into the meeting. My phone rings, and it's Stu Subotnick, who was the lead independent director for Carnival. He says, "Arnold, are you sitting down?" I go, "Oh no, man, what's going on? What happened now?" He said, "No, it's nothing bad." I said, "Okay, great. Tell me, what does this do?" He said, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "No. Just talk to me. What's going on?" He said, "Well, Mickey and the board would like you to run the company." I said, "What? Let me sit down," right? Because like I had never once thought about running the company. I retired. I was cruising through life. I was on a bunch of boards, and I had run juvenile diabetes, started the closed loop artificial pancreas project, and then which is now commercial. I'm happy about that. And I was doing the executive council stuff. So I was, just trying to get back and having fun. And I thought about it. And I said, "I don't know. Man, I think I'm done. I don't really want to, And he said, "Well, Mickey and the board." I said, "By the way, the board, I'm on the board. When you guys have these meetings, so now I'm upset because they're having secret meetings, like I'm out of the loop, right?" And I've known Mickey at this point for 13 years, and I'd be the first person outside the family to run the business. So I felt I owed the respect to listen to him. So we had a long chat, and one thing that so I decided to do, and I should have been begging for the job. It's the best job in the world. I mean, you go to the most beautiful places in the world. You meet all kinds of great people. The Queen multiple times. I mean, of England. I mean, it's a ridiculous job. So it's a ton of fun, and so on. And so I signed up doing it, but the first day on the job, two things happened. So I had an event. We had a fundraiser. I built this house here, and we used it for fundraising and stuff. And had a big fundraiser, and I had Wynton Marsalis playing the piano at my house and all of those. And I had to leave because I had to get to Miami undercover to take the shop. So I get on the plane at a G650. It's one good thing about large corporations. But anyway, I had a G650. Get on the plane. As soon as I sit down, the power goes out. I'm like, "Oh, wow, that's not a good start." And then they rebooted. It took them about 45 minutes, but we got off. So I land in Miami. I get there all day, do the earnings call, what introduced me, all this stuff. Then I jump on the plane and fly back. And on the plane, they contact me, say they would like to do an interview with you on, I don't know which one it was, CNN or NBC or somebody. And there's a studio in St. Louis. I said, "Okay, what time?" It got 5 a.m., for a 6 a.m. broadcast or something. I don't know, something like that. So Carl Sesak, who works with me, he was my chief of staff. So I said, "What do you think?" He said, "I don't know, I don't know, because there's a lot of controversy." And they said, and the PR guy said, "Look, it's a puff piece. It's a puff piece." I said, "Okay, fine." They land. I get in like 2 a.m. I'm up at 5 to go to the studio. We go. It's dark. We get to the studio, and they say, "Oh, you're here for that? Oh, that studio is around the corner in downtown St. Louis, blah, blah, blah." I'm like, okay. So we get back in the car, torrential downpour. It's raining so hard you can't even see in front, right? It's just a few blocks away. We get there, but it's raining like crazy. And there's no cover and no garage. So I'm like, all right. So I walk out, I'm drenched, I go on air wet. Not a good look. When you're
for a cruise.
Not for a cruise, right? It's not a good look. What joke could I tell? What could I do to make this look right? So I'm waiting, and the clock is ticking. And I'm thinking, okay, there's a little bit of a break. So I dart, I get a little wet. I go in, and they say, "Okay, we got time. You take your time. You can dry off a bit. We're gonna do a little makeup, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Oh, good." So, "Oh, sorry, I'm gonna be on in 5 minutes." Right, boom. So now I'm on. I'm not quite dry. And I'm ready for this puff piece. So this is the first question. First, they show the tape. They show the Concordia. They show the Triumph. And the guy says, so, Carnival has had a really terrible time, blah, blah, blah. So, what's wrong with it and how are you going to fix it? That's the first question. And I go, oh boy, all right, here we go. So I luckily had good media training at Monsanto. So I said, look, first of all, there's a lot right with Carnival, okay? And the thing was, Mickey Arison, under the gun, booted out as CEO, all that. This was all the rolling headlines and stuff, which wasn't true at all. And so I just saw there's a lot right with Carnival, first of all. Let me start with that. And then by the end of it, I had them laughing and they warmed up. And so that was the start. So the first thing we had to do was public image. It was the very first thing because the business was still going strong. People who cruise know. And we have a lot of repeat cruisers, so they're never an issue, never. But we need about 25, 30% new cruisers every year. And there's reasons why people haven't cruised. Some is inertia, some is other things, but there are reasons. And so you don't want that negative public image because it gives them another reason not to try cruising, okay? So that was number one. Number two was the people inside the company. They were beaten up. They were just beaten up. The kids go to school, kids are making jokes. Oh, your parents weren't, and all that. So it's a downer. So I had to motivate them, and then I had to pull them together. We had 9. People say Carnival Cruise Lines. It's Carnival Corporation. We have 9 brands. So Queen Mary is ours. Cunard, Seabourn is ours. Carnival, of course. Holland America, Princess, P&O, AIDA in Germany, Costa, so we have 9 brands. And those brands were acting very independently of each other. And so we were missing a lot of synergies, not just from a cost standpoint, there was a lot of that, but there was also, from a creativity standpoint, diversity of thinking and sharing the best practices. So I had to, kind of reshape the whole culture to say, we're a federation of brands, but we're stronger together than we are individually, so let's work together. And so that was kind of the basic template. And then I started with the 5 years from now, what does success look like? And I pulled it. Juvenile diabetes is easy. Everybody involved with juvenile diabetes, they're there for a cure. Okay. So if somebody's pro-stem cell or anti-stem cell, you can get them to talk to each other because they have one thing in common. They both want a cure for their loved one. Okay. And so you got to find that thing to pull people together. And so you asked 5 years out, and I did all that with the senior leadership team in a retreat, made them do silly things together, like, one guy's blindfolded, the other ones have to tell them how to drive, and hopefully they make it, that kind of thing. And so then I did it and they were ready to go. Oh, this is great, we're ready. No, because if I had told you guys this, you wouldn't have bought it. You came up with it yourself and you own it. Your people are going to feel the same way. So let's go the next level down and do the same thing. So brought a much bigger group together, 3 days. Luckily, not surprisingly, but luckily, what that bigger group came up with matched exactly what the senior leadership had come up with as the purpose of the company and stuff. And so once I got that level done, the rest was easy. And then we had great financial success.
Yes. So, you walked into that interview.
Oh man, yeah.
Which could have been a different environment. I'll avoid the shameless plug of you should have had a BBJ rather than a G50, but we won't say that. But as you pulled together the plan going forward, it was about, first and foremost, let's be honest where we are, right?
Yeah.
We've got to build the team.
Yeah.
And then you're going to communicate that across the organization, both internally and externally, and press forward.
Right.
Appreciate that. So let's take a little bit of a turn.
Okay.
Understand you are a fan of the quote, education is
a portal
to prosperity.
Right.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So We have a few folks interested in education here,
Yeah.
either as practicing or as learning or improving their business. What advice do you have for folks about how to develop the skills to create the resilience
Yeah.
and to deal with adversity? Because we're all, as you pointed out, we're going to see adversity. It's a repeated performance.
Yeah. So first of all, the art of originality is concealing your source. So I built this home and I wanted this. I was at a parade in New York, and I'm sorry, in Chicago, and I was the, whatever they call it, the captain or whatever it was. And they interviewed me. It was on education. And so I said, well, education is part of prosperity, meaning fullness of life. Prosperity meaning fullness of life. And I say, you know, that sounds pretty cool. You know, so I was going to put it in ancient Greek, the language of education, over my mantle in my fireplace in my house. And my daughter majored in psychology and ancient Greek. So I called her and said, hey, this is what I want to say in ancient Greek, you know, give it to me. And she's like, oh, Dad, I'll get to it. And, you know, she kept stalling. I don't know, she was busy with her own life or something. And so I finally called over to Greece, and they said, oh, that's a famous Socrates quote. And I was like, no, it's not. I said that, you know, right? They said, no, Socrates is a famous Socrates quote. Well, Socrates is not going on my mantle, okay? So it's going to say education for prosperity, and I'm not putting Socrates' name up there. But so it turns out it is, I don't think they even have portals in Socrates' days. I'm suspicious. But anyway, whatever. So anyway, so it's a Socrates quote, and maybe I had read it and heard it somewhere myself. And so I think when you talk about how do you educate and instill, or what's the role of education and everything and all of that, resiliency is in each and every one of us. We see it repeated through everything we see, whether it's, you know, people with daily challenges, whether they have health challenges, whether it's groups of people, you know, fighting wars and, you know, like what's going on now. And you see it's in our DNA, okay? What you have to do is unleash it, nurture it, and empower it. And education is certainly a way for you to have the self-awareness to realize first your own, but even more importantly, what it takes to inspire and nurture and give other people the freedom, you know, to express it, their own resiliency. And that's what education does through, you know, teaching us how to think critically and informing us of, you know, lessons from the past, even though we continue to repeat the same mistakes. But, you know, hopefully in our time that we're here, you know, we do learn enough from the past that we allow more progress to be made.
So thank you. Appreciate that perspective.
Yeah.
So let's ask if we can open up this conversation to the audience. Anybody have a question for Arnold?
Or for Gene, it'd be good, you know, right? Yeah.
You won't get a good answer from this side.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Mike Higgins with Epic Systems. Thank you for your time and sharing your perspectives with us. I thought those were awesome. My question to you is, how big of an influence do you believe it was in your life that you were told from a very young age to prepare yourself, you're going to run the world? How important was that?
I think it was extremely important in my case. Keep in mind what they were doing. You know, we would go to St. Aug. We went to boot camp almost, right? They break you down and build you back up because they wanted to undo everything society was telling you. Society was saying, you can't drink out this clean, pristine water fountain. You have to drink out, because you're not good enough. You have to drink out this rusty, stained, you know, water fountain. You can't use this bathroom. When I was a little kid, I snuck into the white people's bathroom, okay? So it was after my dad, weeks early in the supermarket, had busted me and my sister, who's 3 years older than me, sweeping our feet under the candy thing with the Brock's candy, because they would drop some on the floor, and I'd take my foot and sweep it and get one. He busted us doing it and say, hey, that's stealing, you can't do that, okay? So I didn't have anything to do while he was in the checkout line. So I was like, I'm gonna go check out the bathrooms. So I went into the white people's bathroom, and it was spotless. I mean, it was white porcelain. They had soft toilet paper, and it was called gentlemen's bathroom. And ours was colored, okay? So it went in, and it was, basically should have been, I guess, stainless steel, but it was rusted, water dripping, water on the floor, brown toilet paper, craft, like really harsh paper and stuff. And the contrast was dramatic for me. So I remember running out, and I wasn't even in kindergarten. I ran out to tell my dad, Dad, you ought to see the white people's bathroom. It's like unbelievable, man. And he was like, what? And I could see the fear in his eyes that I had gone into that bathroom. And for a little kid, that was a big deal. I had never seen my dad afraid. And it made me feel less about him at that young age. Now, later, as I matured, I learned a lot and, all that. But at that time, okay? And so it's a huge impact, and it also scared me, right? I was afraid. So now you're walking through life afraid. That's not a good thing. Now, I grew up in a tough neighborhood, had a lot of other things to be afraid of, but I was, my dad, very young, my dad was clearly afraid, and that had a huge impact. So somebody trying to reverse all that, and then luckily what was going on around me supported that too, right? Because civil rights, things were changing, and you could see it and witness it, and it's happening for me as a teenager, right? Teenage years, or so the combination of them reinforcing, and then we were excelling. We did national math competition and we won. We did national debate competition and we won. And it wasn't just black, it was national. It was, football team, we integrated. We went to court, to Supreme Court in Louisiana. The school did, to integrate high school athletics in Louisiana. There's actually something up in the National African American Museum at the Smithsonian in DC about it. But our football team won. Our basketball team has been a movie made about it, won, and so we were winning, so it's reinforcing we could do anything we wanted to do. And having that allowed me to set really big goals. Like a general manager in a Fortune 50 sign. Nobody in my family was even in business, okay? So without that, there's no way I would even thought to set goals like that, you know what I mean? And then when I got to college, I decided I was going to do econ, mechanical engineering, and business. But I did econ because I wanted 2 undergraduate degrees to give me a leg up on getting the most prestigious business school. It was all a plan. But I'm going to be different than other 3-2 engineering students because I'm going to do real liberal arts, not math, physics, or chemistry. I'm going to do a different liberal arts, which meant I got to take a lot of extra credits and hours. So I basically would have graduated Carleton in 3 years. And when I first went in, everybody was telling me, man, what are you talking about? You'll be lucky to graduate. You can't take all these courses. And I had profs who were telling me, why are you such an overachiever? Relax. Don't, but they didn't understand, but I believed I could. Well, even everybody kept telling me I couldn't do it. And I ended up doing a summer, I squeezed it in. I needed to do part of my plan, international study on being a global business. So I did independent study in Brazil, something like, oito anos atrás. So I did this independent study in Brazil, and I squeezed all this stuff in, because I was on a mission. And so it gave me a naive sense of incredible self-confidence. And in my case, it worked out. I hope I answered your question. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Hi, Arnold. Pierce Powers,
Hey, Pierce.
World Affairs Council of St. Louis.
Yeah.
International man that you are. My claim to fame is my mother was French, and I really care about St. Louis.
Yeah.
Just think about it. You don't have to give an answer that's final. But how do we put our city back on the map? So when you're traveling with Carnival or you're in Europe, you meet the king.
Yeah.
He says, "Oh, you're from St. Louis." We need to do something. Just give that some thought. I don't expect an all-around answer, but I love this community. We need to keep it on the map.
Yeah.
Thanks for everything, Arnold.
Hey, thank you, Pierce. Thank you. Yeah, real quickly, I think, first of all, there is a need. So you can go a lot of places, and, St. Louis, Spirit of St. Louis, Lindbergh, they don't get it, right? So there is a need. But I think all the basic ingredients are here. And I don't know if Don, Ruben, and BJ are still around, but we've got the whole bio in center, and we have Washington University, we have St. Louis University, we have a lot of things, and so there are a lot of people around the world that do know and have a huge amount of respect for St. Louis, but we're not the common name in the mass populations, that a Paris or London or New York would be. I don't know if we ever need to be that, but we certainly need to work to continue to make people aware of what a treasure this region is, and how much talent and is capable here.
So Arnold, with that,
Yes.
let me ask before we wrap up, any last bit of advice for the audience going forward, other than don't let things get in your way, right?
No, I think, look, the thing I learned really early in life somehow, and I was very lucky to do so, listen, listen, listen. I've been up here talking the whole time, but if you spend any time with me, you'll find I do a lot less talking and a lot of asking. If you listen, and you listen with intention, the world will reveal itself to you, okay? If you listen to your customers, in the cruise business was our guest, but if you listen to your customers, they will tell you how to exceed their expectations. If you listen to your employees, they will tell you how, once you've identified what it takes to exceed your customers' expectations, how to do that in a way that's sustainable, okay? If you listen to the communities you're in, they will tell you what you have to do to have the freedom to operate. Because a lot of people think, there's a short-term focus on business. Most large corporations, most of them get it. They know that you have to think long-term. You have to be a good corporate citizen. If you're not, you will be regulated out of business, okay? So listen to the communities, and they will tell you, what you have to do to have to earn the right to conduct business. So listen, 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 and listen with intent. And when you think ask again, and ask 5 different ways. The last bit of advice for the young people here is, there will be people who you will feel are against you, who you feel are not supporting you. Do not run away from those people. If you can get to them in a truly open way and say, look, somehow I'm not working for you. Whatever, something about me or some things I'm doing just doesn't work for you. Could you please help me understand that? Because my goal is to be able to work productively with everybody. And if you can help me identify that, I promise you I will consider working on it. And if you can get them to tell you what it is, you have the power. You can then decide, you know what, I ain't changing. And that's your prerogative. Or you can say, wow, I didn't realize when I did that, that created that reaction in you. I can change that. But the power is all yours, but you have to know. So don't run away from those people who aren't supporting you, okay? Try to find out what is it that's causing them not to support you. And then you have the power to decide. So one last story, and I'll leave it alone. I had a guy once ask me, why are you people in the chemical industry? It was one of my boss's boss. I say, you people. He said, you colored people, why are you in the chemical industry? I said, oh, wow. Why are you in the chemical industry? He said, well, I like it. I make money for my family, blah, blah. I said, well, that's kind of like me too. He said, I don't get it. Okay. And so there's nothing to do with that except, I do now have with this guy an understanding on my end. Okay. And similarly, I've had people who would say, I just don't like the way you do XYZ. Okay. And sometimes I would change the way I did it. And sometimes I would take somebody, I'd say, thank you very much. I never, argue, debate, none of that stuff. Thank you. And I reflect on it. I say, well, they're going to have to live with that because I'm not going to change that. And so you'll figure it out for yourself, but find out. Don't play logic leap in your head where you're figuring it all out. Let them tell you, work at it hard so they actually speak the words so you really know where they're coming from. Thank you.
Arnold, thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you. Gene, pleasure, my man.
All the best.
Thank you, brother.
Thank
We're gonna go this way.
To everyone here, thank you for your attention. We hope that you enjoyed lunch and a little food for thought, some powerful messages from Arnold Donald. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Gene. Thank you, brother.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Arnold Donald as we dove into international business resilience and his personal story. If you learned something from this podcast, please support our show by leaving a review with your podcast provider. We hope you will join us next time as we continue to explore international business. I'm Todd Hovermale, bringing you conversations that matter.
Thank you for tuning in to the SLU International Business Now Conversations That Matter podcast. We invite you to subscribe to this podcast series so you don't miss any future episodes. To learn more about the Executive Master of International Business program, please visit biib.slu.edu. Again, that's biib.slu.edu.